Again, everybody, and thank you for joining me in this segment we call Windy City Sports Podcast. My name's Mike Hansa. With me, as always, is Tommy. Tommy, what's going on, buddy?
Mike, happy Thursday. Hope you guys have all been tweeting Throwback Thursday. Some embarrassing photos. I know I sure have. How about you?
Of course I have. I'm more of a Flashback Friday type of guy than a Throwback Thursday.
Or maybe a Flash Forward Friday, and you just have a picture of your gravestone. That's what I would do if
I can just do like a reality, just something where I think like what I want my grades to be, and then like what my grades actually are.
Yeah.
I don't know what we would call that though.
You know what? We're gonna have to talk to the people at Twitter. Wait, speaking of Twitter,
tell me something about it.
I feel like we have an announcement to make about Twitter, don't you?
Yeah, we do. We are actually now on Twitter. This podcast, you can follow us at WCS_podcast on Twitter. Again, that's WCS_podcast. So we're on the Twitter game now. Me and Tommy are, we're making moves. Follow us, please. We'll give you a follow back. Maybe. Yeah, look for us to get on SoundCloud too here. So, do you guys want to hear a joke real quick, Tommy?
I would love to hear a joke. Let's hear it.
Well, if you're listening to my voice, that is the joke because... So, I am an idiot. I'm a joke. I go ahead and I get this nice microphone that I'm properly talking into now. And our last two podcasts, we were not actually using the microphone that I bought, but we were actually, even though it was plugged in and we thought we were using it, we were still using the microphone through the computer. So literally this microphone in front of us is just a physical metaphor.
Right.
So
you're saying that the microphone that is in between you and I right now is kind of like the space that high schoolers leave for Jesus at dances when they're dancing with each other?
That's exactly what it is.
All right.
Yeah.
Great. That's good to know. Well, now we are properly plugged in and there's plenty of space for Jesus in this room.
Let's do this thing. We're going to start off with the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears. Tommy, they've won 2 games in a row. We're now 4-5. You can honestly argue that we could have won our last 4 games in a row with the other 2 losses of combined 6 points to Detroit and Minnesota. What do you think of these 2 last wins in St. Louis and in San Diego?
Oh, it's been very, very good for the Bears. They've looked sharp on both sides of the ball. Cutler, in particular, has played very well. We've been fairly critical of him on this podcast, but give the man credit where it's due. He looks like he's under control and knowing the plays in this offense, and I think a lot of that has to do with the offensive coordinator, Adam Gase, don't you?
No, I agree, and one thing that they have worked on so well with him this year has been his ball protection. They were highlighting it, I remember, Monday Night Football against the Chargers, just not only showing him running with the ball, that he's having 2 hands on the football, and the football's in a secure place compared to in years past where it's been that one hand and just it's knocking loose, fumbling it left and right. So it's glad to see him protecting it not only in the air, but as well as on the ground too. So it's a big step up for Cutler. I just really like what the coaching staff has done with Adam Gase and John Fox. It's a completely new Jay Cutler.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, if you look at the numbers, he's only throwing interceptions on 1.8% of his passes compared to a few years ago and where it was at 3.2, 3.4.
Wow.
His first year at 4.7. So he has literally cut the interception percentage in half. And as you mentioned, he's doing a better job protecting the ball and with fumbles as well. And he also has the second highest completion percentage of his career. Oddly enough, last year was the highest he'd registered. But, 64 for a guy who's usually 3 points lower than that in the NFL, you'll take it every day and twice on Sunday, especially on Sunday.
Especially on Sunday.
Yeah. But, overall, I've been very pleased with what I've seen. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the year, they have gotten better every single week, and that's a huge sign of improvement for them.
Yeah, well, right now the talk in Chicago with John Fox is he's legit saying we're not going to hold back and we're going to try and make these playoffs from here on out. First of all, if you remember our first podcast, we were talking about USA Today. They had the Bears as literally the team finishing last in the entire league. So the fact that we're here in, what is this, week 10 now?
It's week 11,
Week 11, actually, yeah.
And by the way, we didn't think they were the worst team at the time, and although I didn't think they would be 4-5 at this point.
No, not at all. But the fact that we are talking about that the Bears do have a chance to make it to the playoffs is kind of quite crazy. But if you're looking ahead at the remainder schedule of this year, besides going to Green Bay on Thanksgiving, we have a shot, Tommy.
Yeah, well, let's talk about this for a couple reasons. Number one, I'm not sure what's going on in the NFC, but there seems to be a very, very much a lack of a hierarchy. Technically, the Panthers are the best team. They're 9-0.
Yep.
I see a lot of flaws with them. But the main reason that the Bears now find themselves, at least within a stone's throw of being in the playoff mix, is because there's this large gluttony of 4 and 5 teams. Currently, Atlanta's the 6th seed, but you've got Washington, Tampa Bay, St. Louis, Seattle, Philadelphia, the Bears, and then even the Saints are 4 and 6 on a bye this week. So we're talking about a fair amount of teams that all have the same exact record.
How many? That's 7, right?
Yeah, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6 of them.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's going to be a tall task for the Bears to overcome a lot of those teams based on tiebreakers.
Especially when you look at the two teams that are 6-3 for that wild card spot. It's hard to go past an Atlanta Falcon team and a Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I don't envision a scenario where Green Bay doesn't make the playoffs, barring an injury to Rodgers. But having said that, the Bears got a huge break this week. They get Brock Osweiler in his first career start at home. Green Bay, like I said, they're kind of crumbling
at this
moment. So
did you know the blame for Green Bay is 2 things here. Ever since Ditka put on a Green Bay uniform, or whatever it was.
Oh, God, and that McDonald's commercial?
Yeah, they're 0-3. I got to talk to my uncle about that. Uncle John, if you're listening, I got to talk to you why Ditka is in Green Bay. And then also, they're blaming Olivia Munn. They're literally giving threats to Olivia Munn, saying, you need to break up with Aaron Rodgers.
Well, listen, if you want to see some really entertaining interviews with Olivia Munn and Craig Ferguson, I suggest you go to YouTube right after this podcast. But I don't think she has anything to do with the Packers' lackluster defense. And apparently they just forgot that Randall Cobb was on their team. He had 0 targets in the first 3 quarters of that game last Sunday.
Makes no sense. So even with... go back to the Bears here. The Bears are battling injuries. They are. I mean, Kevin White, people probably forgot that he even existed. We'll just say that. Eddie Royal's been out. Alshon Jeffrey's been struggling, and Pernell McPhee, as well as Matt Forte. He's still questionable for Sunday's games. Let me ask you real quick. Last time we talked, I asked you, what do you think Jeremy Langford was going to do stepping in? And you said... nada. You said his expectations were not going to meet of where he's played these past 2 weeks. How do you feel now? What do you think he can keep this rolling or what?
Hey, obviously I've been proven wrong in a 2-week sample size. One of them against really the worst run defense in football with San Diego, but then he also did the same thing against the Rams, who have one of the best defenses in football. So. No question, he has certainly stepped it up with the production. I think it's certainly worth giving him a shot for the rest of the year, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, definitely in the passing game, he's far surpassed my expectations. I didn't think that there was any running back on the roster, or maybe a handful of guys in the NFL that could do what Forte does, catching the ball. But so far, Langford has definitely done that and also complemented it with a strong running game. So apologies to the Langford family for my lack of faith, I guess.
So, is this looking like it then after this year? Is this the end of the Forte era in Chicago? And is this going to be the start of Jeremy Langford at running back?
I feel pretty confident that at the very least it's the end of the Forte era because, now he's getting up there in age. He's 30 years old. Once you start getting north of 30 at running back, it's a pretty sharp decline. So I think you go with the younger back, you go with the fresher legs. We wish Matt Forte the very best.
Of course.
He did nothing but produce, but this is just life in the NFL.
So we're talking too real quick. How does this with the Bears? They are fighting for a playoff spot, but let's even just go ahead. Let's skip a little to next year.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see the Bears with how they've been playing, being in the next couple of years with Jay Cutler being healthy? We got this new great coaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
The young players will get Kevin White back, healthy. Jeffrey. I mean, do you think they can? It's an easy fix, just a couple pieces in the puzzle that can be put into place to get this team in a strong playoff contention?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I think there are multiple answers. Number one, I think at this point it seems like they're probably going to keep Cutler for one more year.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, we're going to be kind of in wait-and-see mode with Cutler because I have a very strong inkling that Adam Gase is going to be a head coach next year. So they will be working with a new offensive coordinator, most likely. And so far, Gase has gotten the most out of Cutler of any coach he's had. So you have to question, is there going to be a drop-off? And on the flip side of that, as good as Cutler has looked, he's still in the middle of the pack in terms of all the other quarterbacks in the league. So now you're going to ask yourself, where do we see ourselves going with Cutler next year?
Do you see the Bears? Let me ask you this. Do you see the Bears using a first-round draft pick on a quarterback next year? Or do you see them using that on the defensive side?
I don't see that happening unless a guy fell into their laps, somebody like maybe a Jared Goff, who's highly rated right now, that seemed like way too good to pass up. I think they would still want to plug up some holes on defense, which there clearly still are. Maybe on the offensive line, maybe some skill players on offense if they lose Alshon Jeffrey. But, I don't see them taking a quarterback in the first round, but maybe there's a Derek Carr-esque situation where somebody comes up in round 2 where they say...
How great has he been, by the way?
He has been fantastic.
Holy cow.
Really high on him. But so that's big question number 1 for them. Number 2...
It was Jeffrey. Do you think Jeffrey will be back?
I don't know. I honestly don't know right now. I don't know what the market is going to be for him. I do know that historically free agent wide receivers rarely work out the way anyone thinks that they will. To a lesser degree, Andre Johnson this year. Mike Wallace in the past.
Terrible.
Vincent Jackson signed a $55 million deal a couple years ago.
What has he done with Tampa Bay?
He's essentially irrelevant now. So, Jeffrey's kind of got to make a decision. Does he want to stay with the Bears, be in a system and with
that
coaches that he knows?
Yep.
Or does he want to chase the money and go somewhere and, risk potentially, making what's in the past been a poor step for receivers? So that's question number 2. The third question I have for the Bears going forward is the next step on defense is obviously being better than they were this year. We've seen it in flashes. The scores indicate that they're clearly getting better every week.
Exactly.
And are we going to draft personnel better than what we have right now to run the 3-4 so that Vic Fangio can continue to do the great job that he's been doing?
He has been doing a great job. Granted, like you said, the defense is still far-fetched from where we want to be. Mm-hmm. I still remember your comment that the Bears cannot build a defense around Kyle Fuller.
No, they cannot.
But like you said, with guys stepping up, like Sam Acho and then Pernell McPhee just looked like one of the greatest signings that we could have done.
Yeah.
So, like you said, there are key pieces that are missing on that defensive side that I feel like it's just, 1 or 2 players away from an easy fix. But then it's like, what side do you need to address more?
Yeah, I don't think even after this offseason we're going to feel real solid about saying the Bears are a playoff team. It's still going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
And it's still going to be a process. So I don't think that's an insult to any of the current coaches on the staff. I mean, they inherited this situation.
Oh, by no means.
They're making the strides that I expected them to make thus far.
Do you know John Fox will not say he's part of a rebuilding Bears? He will
really?
never admit that. That's not the way he looks at it.
Interesting.
Yeah, kind of funny.
He also did go 1-15 his first year with Carolina. So he knows a thing or two about rebuilds.
So let's move on to the NFL. We only have 2 teams remaining that are undefeated. The New England Patriots of the AFC, and then you have the Carolina Panthers of the NFC. Mm-hmm. So are these the 2 favorite teams to make the Super Bowl so far? Is with this win over Green Bay, even though they have been shaky, has Carolina proven themselves to be a top-notch team to go to the Super Bowl?
Oh, well, they're certainly they're in the conversation.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would say definitively that they're the favorite right now, but I wouldn't argue with you if that's what you believe.
Let me read off these top 6 teams in the NFC. You got Carolina's at first at 9-0, and then you got Arizona and Minnesota's at 7-2. The Packers are at 6-3, the Falcons are at 6-3, and the Giants are 5-5. Mm-hmm. Of those teams, who are the ones that you say? Is it still Green Bay in your eyes, or?
I mean, Green Bay has definitely taken a step back since we last talked, so I'll say Carolina's better than them. The team I want to say, oddly enough, you brought them up last time, the Cardinals.
Yeah.
I think that they have a little bit more of foundation that I like.
Yeah.
They've got guys that are veterans that have done there before. Bruce Arians has won a Super Bowl as a coordinator. So I think right now, in terms of teams I trust, I would put them slightly ahead of Carolina, but Carolina's most likely going to be the 1 seed, and that's going to be huge for them, and I would love to see Cam Newton step up big time and really make a statement that, hey, I'm a top quarterback, and we are a legitimate Super Bowl team.
Boy, what a difference he makes. Just with his ability to scramble, they're showing how many options this guy has, because the dude can run the ball, throw the ball. He shakes up the whole defensive scheme that's going on. And then when you look at their team was last year, did you see them being 9-0 with these injuries that they've been facing in preseason too?
Oh, no way. They've certainly surpassed the lowered expectations. Last year they were 6-9-1
and made the playoffs on the very last week.
They made the playoffs because they won a historically bad division.
Yeah.
And then they won a playoff game, oddly, against the Cardinals, who we're also talking about, basically because the Cardinals were down to Ryan Lindley at quarterback.
What was he, 8th string?
He was some kind of string. A shoestring, maybe?
A shoestring.
It was a bad string, no matter what. But, yeah, the NFC, I would say, is fairly open.
Yeah.
Even though Carolina is 9-0.
Yeah, I still say my team, like I said before in the past, is the Arizona Cardinals. They just beat Seattle, a tough Seattle team.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, the real test will be this week. They play a very good Cincinnati Bengals team at home, who actually finally had their first loss against Houston.
Yep.
How do you see this game playing out? Do you think this being a good matchup?
I think Arizona's going to win kind of convincingly, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, I think what I saw with the Bengals last week, and I don't want to overreact to one game, but I saw a team that was kind of exposed against a bad team. I mean, the Texans have been one of the worst teams in football this year.
Yeah.
And they sort of controlled the game, even, with a floundering quarterback situation. So I think right now Arizona is primed to make a statement coming off a huge win at Seattle. And the Bengals, I mean, yeah, they've been in this situation before this year, and they've proved me wrong, but I think Arizona will win.
Real quick, while we are in Arizona, what do you make of the play of Chris Johnson this year at running back? 166 carries for 734 yards and 3 touchdowns. He passed Ellington. Ellington had that injury early on in the season. And then once he took over the RB1, he hasn't given it up since.
Yeah, I mean, to say I'm surprised is probably underselling it. This is a guy who was in a shooting incident in the offseason.
He had no nerve. He had the nerve and feeling in his hand.
I've assumed that he was done playing football, let alone being second in the NFL in yards rushing.
Yeah.
Only behind Adrian Peterson. So, yeah, he's been a revelation. There's no question.
Yeah, great story so far this year. I already know Arizona's in talks to signing him longer, and he does fit into that scheme of that Bruce Arians offense as well. So the thing with Arizona is they're so good on both sides, especially when you hit the time machine on Chris Johnson and Larry Fitzgerald, who are both having career years, just with their age and everything else. No one expected this from them.
Yeah. What do you think about the AFC, Mike?
The greatest quarterback career of anybody. Cincinnati Bengals. They have a chance to make noise, but as long as Marvin Lewis is your head coach, there's and you mix in the playoff conversation. That doesn't go together.
Yeah, I mean they have to prove it to me. That's the situation I'm in with them.
My dark horse though, and I think you will like this, as long as the quarterback can stay healthy, Big Ben.
Just say it, Mike. Just say the Steelers.
I just want to say the Pittsburgh Steelers, Tommy. Jeez. Despite Le'Veon Bell going down, they have a great backup in Williams.
Yeah, D'Angelo Williams has been really good this year. I can't say I saw that coming. Obviously, I was foreseeing a healthy Le'Veon Bell, but the real surprising thing with them this year is going into the season, we figured that the offense would be a top 5 offense and the defense would hold them back. But oddly enough, given the injury situation, it's the defense that's held them up and the offense that has held them back. Yeah. So
let me read you Le'Veon Bell's stats and D'Angelo Williams. Let me know who you think is who. So one's got 113 attempts on 556 yards, good for 3 touchdowns on the ground. The other has 107 attempts, good for 534 yards on the ground with another 5 touchdowns. Which one is who?
That's pretty much identical. I guess I would say
they're both identical, just about.
Bell and Williams.
Yeah, who do you think Bell and...
I think Bell's the first one.
Bell's the first one?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're correct. So, I mean, if you're looking at right now on stats, you're fine. Pittsburgh Steelers with Le'Veon Bell being hurt.
Yeah, the guy that's been the glue that's held us together, aside from Roethlisberger, is Antonio Brown.
Holy cow.
Is unbelievable. And
is he, bar none, the best receiver in the NFL in your eyes?
No question. At this point, there's no doubt he's the best receiver in the league. And what he does with his, not only just his route running, but the way he fits into spaces and gets separation.
Yeah.
This is not a guy who's a big individual. He's only 5'10", 190 pounds, commanding double teams.
If that 5'10".
So, yeah, he's been unbelievable. And Martavis Bryant, too, is kind of like an under-the-radar secret weapon for us that can just take the top off of defense. And he's built like a freight train.
He is. How big is he? 6'4"?
6'4", 225 pounds. And
holy cow.
He's a big guy and a fast guy, too. So
I know.
It looks like they're probably going to, at this rate, sneak into a wild card situation right now. If the playoffs were to start today, they'd be on the road at the Colts, which, sorry, Colts, not really scared of that matchup. No. So, they could be a sleeper, but obviously New England is the best team in football right now, and you can't deny it.
Yeah, I agree. There is no denying that New England is the best team in football. I expect them to make a run, even with these injuries like we mentioned, Julian Edelman with a broken foot and Dion Lewis. So it'll be interesting, come playoff time to see what teams are in fact in there and who is going to make a run at it. So let's go ahead and talk about Notre Dame here. We're going to go on to the blue and gold here, Tommy. They just had a nice big win against Wake Forest last week, 28-7. We've been talking about this next man up mentality. CJ Precise goes down now. But, Josh Adams steps up 141 yards on 17 carries and 2 touchdowns. That's not a bad stat sheet to have.
No, it's not. And, one of the things that we also discussed was Notre Dame to make the playoff, they were going to have to basically run the table on their schedule, and they've essentially done that. But the surprise here is that they've done it without so many of the key contributors that we thought that they might have to do it. So
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. We go ahead. We have 2 more games to end the year. We go to Boston College, which is at Fenway Park. Pretty cool setup. If you guys have not seen it, there's a cool little 2-minute clip showing the process of them setting up the stadium. And then we play Stanford, which is one of our golden tickets if we're going to make this college football playoff or not. So we were talking before the show here. Stanford losing to Oregon by 2 points didn't help Notre Dame at all.
it did not help out at all. And Stanford already had a bad loss on their schedule week 1 against Northwestern that was already hanging over their head. So
Yeah.
this was not something Notre Dame needed when they're looking for, some end-of-the-year resume boosters for the College Football Playoff Committee. But, the gods of the playoff committee have actually given them a seal of approval by ranking them ahead of 3 undefeated teams.
Yeah.
So I think right now, as is, Notre Dame wins out. They might still be in there, but certain things have to go their way over the next couple weeks.
Okay, well let's go in and talk about this college football playoff then. So we were talking before, the top 4 is pretty much the same. Only LSU, who has now lost their last 2 games, is out with that big loss to Bama. Notre Dame sneaks in to number 4. Do you agree with how the rankings are right now?
I guess I do. I'm not going to argue against having one-loss Notre Dame over Oklahoma State right now, but that opinion will change if Oklahoma State beats Oklahoma in a couple weeks on the road. So
And they play Baylor at home too.
they do play Baylor at home. So this is a big stretch for Oklahoma State. And it's kind of funny. Last year the Big 12 was complaining that people weren't giving them the benefit of the doubt at the end of the year, not scheduling enough tough games. They don't have a championship game. But so then this year they schedule it intentionally so that all of their big guns are playing each other the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, we were
so
talking
that you're
about.
so that you're remembering, all right, this is the Big 12. They're playing all their tough games. I'm going to remember this. But it's actually now worked against them because all these teams are essentially cannibalizing each other, and they could end up all with one loss, and now the Big 12 their strategy has now backfired essentially. So the conference is clearly wanting Oklahoma State to run the table, at which point I would put them over a one-loss Notre Dame being a Big 12 power conference champion. So that's where I stand on that. Do you agree?
I have to agree with it. I think so too. If you're a Power 5 conference and you go undefeated and win your conference, especially in the Big 12, then yes. What we were saying before is one thing that the Big 12 did smart this year is they're selling high on all their teams at the end of the year. Like we said, all the main teams have to play each other at the end. They want them to all have the highest ranking as possible, so it shows when that team does win. They beat a top, 5 team for whatever it was.
Right.
So if you're a Power 5 conference team and you go undefeated, you have to be in there, especially if there's more teams that, have one loss, like Notre Dame or whoever it should be.
Sure.
So, but it'll be interesting to see if they can go undefeated. They do play their toughest games now. So they go to Baylor next week, who finally lost, which proves the committee right.
Right.
And then they play Oklahoma as well at home. So those are 2 pretty tough games.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not going to be an easy thing for Oklahoma State to do. Should they do it, I believe they should be in the top 4. But, it works out nicely for Notre Dame that the teams standing in their way have to face the most Herculean of tasks to get in.
Yeah.
Because I would say the same thing for Iowa. Right now, Iowa, they close the year at Purdue and Nebraska. So in all likelihood, they'll win those games. But then they're going to have to play most likely Ohio State. Ohio State plays Michigan State, their biggest game by far this year. So as long as Notre Dame takes care of business, there's a chance that the chips could fall their way still, and they could be in this playoff. But none of it happens if they don't beat Stanford at the end of the year.
Exactly. That's the number one thing that needs to be done. Well, one thing I was listening to Joey Galloway this week, which I thought was interesting, is he said out of the top 6 teams, everyone controls their destiny if they win out except for Notre Dame. Do you think that's a valid statement to win? So, like, if Iowa wins out and they do go ahead and beat Ohio State, they'll be in over Ohio State. They've proven themselves, but obviously if Ohio State wins out, Clemson, and so forth, if Oklahoma State, we said, wins out, they'll be in. So would you agree? Do you think that sounds about right? If that's...
Yeah, Joey Galloway is exactly right, because if theoretically all 6 of those teams can't win out, but if 5 of those teams that are in there win out, and so does Notre Dame's going to be left out because they're not going to exclude Alabama in that situation. They're going to have to keep Clemson, they're going to have to keep the Big Ten champion, and then they're going to have to keep Oklahoma State. So that's exactly how that would happen, but we'll see. Oklahoma State is kind of like the linchpin there on what they're going to do, because Clemson's probably going to win out, and we could have an undefeated Big Ten champion. So that's 2 spots plus Alabama, assuming they win as well. But.
Yeah. Well, let me bring this up to you. So we know the college football playoff there's a committee, like you recapped before. They decide on strength of schedule and so forth, on what teams are going to be in. So, part of the reason why this playoff was put into place was, do these non-Power 5 conference teams deserve a spot into the playoff?
Sure.
And that's why we did add this 4-team playoff. We didn't have to address that last year because there was no undefeated teams outside the Power 5 conferences. So we didn't have to worry about that talk coming up.
Yeah.
However, this year, me and you were talking about before a couple of weeks ago that we wanted to see Memphis, go and win out. But now they lost their last 2 games now, but the University of Houston has now stepped in as the front runner for to win out the AAC, the American Athletic Conference. Do you think that they should be in the college football playoff, even, let's say, if Oklahoma State wins out? Do you think they deserve to be in over Notre Dame and these Bamas and everything else?
No, I don't. Theoretically, you are correct that the idea behind having a playoff was that you would include some more teams that were deserving of being in the conversation, right?
Exactly.
And, typically there have been years where Boise State was undefeated, or TCU.
Even my Northern Illinois.
Right, back when there were only 2 teams that were essentially in the running. So, yes, in the past that might have been true, but the bottom line is we just wanted the 4 best teams, or the 2 best teams, or however many of the best teams to be included. And I don't think there's any argument you could make that Houston is one of the top 4 teams in the country. So as much as I think it would be cool to see Houston, a team like them, in the mix, I would want to feel that they were deserving of it, not just arbitrarily say, well, we've set this up so that any undefeated team is in there, because, that's just not how this should work.
And that's how the committee has proven it to be. Otherwise, all these teams would be ahead. Iowa would be in it right now still. So, yeah, like you said, the biggest thing and concern to the committee is strength of schedule. And, granted...
And really, it's just about finding the 4 best teams.
Exactly. That's just what comes down to it is, after the season does end with a win-loss record, who you did lose to, that's how it's going to be at the end of the year. So real quick, Oklahoma, let's say they go ahead and beat OK State. They win out. Let's say Notre Dame goes ahead and they win out. Do you have to put in Notre Dame over Oklahoma State? Would you agree with me on that?
I would agree there. Yeah, because Oklahoma's loss is to Texas, and Notre Dame rolled Texas. So that one's a clear a clear decision for the committee.
Yeah, so I think so too. You know, after hearing some chitter chatter this week, how maybe it is Oklahoma, but that not only did they lose to Texas, Tommy, they got their asses whooped.
They did.
They got their asses whooped. So it will be really, really interesting to see how these next couple of weeks play off. You know, I do want to see how a University of Houston team, I want to see them win out, which is very capable for them, even though they do play a tough...
and if they do win out, they will be playing on New Year's Day as part of the agreement for winning their conference. So it won't be, all bad for them. Plus, Mike, if they're in the college football playoff, then Mizzou can't hire Tom Herman to be the head coach, and I need that to happen.
Yeah,
so, Houston, you're not going to the playoff. Stay out of the playoffs.
Stay out of the damn playoffs.
Dang Cougars. I like Cougars, by the way.
Well,
FYI.
I can't say anything bad about them. Real quick, we're not going to talk much about the Chicago Cubs. A couple things. It's been a good week, though, to be a Chicago Cubs fan. 3 individual awards have been handed out. Chris Bryant was the National League Rookie of the Year. Joe Madden was Manager of the Year. And Jake Arrieta won the National League Cy Young Award. Real quick, we just want to give a big congratulations from me as a Cubs fan and the Sox fan on the other side of the table. So, the future is looking bright, especially if you can add a guy like David Price into the mix. So, that's all we're going to say, though, about the Cubs real quick. Tommy, Chicago Bulls, Derrick Rose, sprained ankle.
And now, the sprained ankle for your Derrick Rose. Oh, Alan Parsons, what would we do without you? Let's talk about the Bulls, Mike. What do you got to say?
So, the Bulls, I mean, if you're on top of the Eastern Conference, 11 games in the season, sitting at 8-3, I'm going to say nothing but great things about the Chicago Bulls. That's plain and simple about that. Besides that bad loss at Charlotte where we got our asses handed to us, the Bulls arguably look great. It's funny because we always, like my dad says, whenever we play these great teams, we beat the great teams, but it's the terrible teams. We lose to the bad teams. That's how it's always been.
Yeah, well, that was how it was last year for sure, and obviously the Charlotte game was bad, but what I've been most impressed with as of late is the way they've performed at the end of games, especially the last 3 games. Let's just break it down. So Charlotte last Friday,
yep.
Jimmy Butler, again at the end of the game, took over, and they played good, hard defense. They beat a Charlotte team by 5.
Yep.
The 3 nights later, Paul George, who is playing incredible basketball.
Holy cow, is this man on fire.
Came in averaging 27 a game and 9 assists. And Jimmy Butler, once again, who also leads our team in scoring,
yep.
comes through in the clutch. And then last night against Phoenix, who probably not a playoff team, but they're a feisty group. They lead the league in actually offensive pacing, which is something we've sort of struggled with. And we go on the road and we beat them. Jimmy Butler scored 14 in the 4th quarter. So,
jeez, and that's without Derrick Rose with the sprained ankle.
Yeah, no Derrick Rose. Oh, and let's not forget a couple weeks ago against Oklahoma City, they won that game as well in a tight situation. So
yeah,
they're 8-3. The Charlotte loss excluded, you could probably throw in the Minnesota overtime loss too. That wasn't a great feeling, but I will take 8-3 through 11 games. How about you?
No, exactly. Like you said, despite these couple bad losses, when you win over against a tough Indiana team, and even I will take this Suns victory because we have had trouble going into Phoenix and winning in Phoenix. That's always been a theme of ours these past couple of years. So it's been really great to see him with that big W. Like you said, Jimmy Butler with that 14 points in the 4th quarter and a big 3-pointer, that big 3 he hit to take the lead by, I believe, 7 at the very end there.
Yeah.
Was quite impressive. I know all our hearts dropped when we played Indiana when Derrick Rose exited with a left ankle sprain. So as a Chicago Bulls fan, all you can do is just, say a prayer 100 million times a night. That's it, though. Nothing more than that.
At this point, I think God just has like a separate cabinet for Derrick Rose prayers.
Yeah.
And he has people that are allocated to that and listening to that constantly. So.
Yeah. So it's honestly, not only are we talking about Jimmy Butler, but even these other guys on the team, you look at a guy like Doug McDermott who's shooting 53% from the field right now, averaging 10.5 points per game.
Which, by the way, is leading the NBA. Did you know that?
I did know that. So the man looks unreal, especially, Tommy, you know the dude is shooting also 54% from three? Shooting 54%. Like that.
That's what I meant. He was leading the league in three-point percentage.
Three-pointers, yeah, that's what I was touching on.
Yeah. McDermott has looked very good in expanded minutes. Last year, he kind of got in the doghouse with Thibodeau, and then he hurt his knee, and essentially he was never playing. But Sam Smith from Bulls.com said that McDermott is by far our best shooter. He was saying that last year when nobody else could see him play, just in practice. Now he's getting that opportunity and proving that to be correct, and thank God for that, because the truth is we don't really have a lot of great true shooters like McDermott.
Yeah, and what we talk about the Bulls, we are at first right now in the Eastern Conference. Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned before, we really didn't. It's the exact same Bulls team from the last year, like you said, minus add Bobby Portis, subtract
Nazir Mohammed.
Yeah. So besides that, like you said, it's the exact same team.
Yeah,
bar none with that. So. But you do got these guys like Doug McDermott stepping up. Tony Snell's playing great. It's just, I like what Fred Hoiberg is doing with all these young guns, getting the rotation. We honestly look like we are the most in-depth team in the NBA.
Well, maybe in the East, but there's a team out west called Golden State that I would probably say is the deepest team in the NBA. Oh, by the way, the Bulls play them Friday night, which by the time you're listening to this will probably be tonight. So
yeah.
Wow, Golden State, huh? What a team.
Do you remember what happened last year when we went into Golden State?
I believe we won in overtime.
We did go into overtime. And Derrick Rose hit that nice game-winning shot. So, Golden State is not an easy task to win. It'll be very interesting to see how the Bulls and do play them this year. So,
yeah.
What are your thoughts on this game? Do you think the Bulls have a shot to win it right now? Or?
Wow, going into Golden State, the way they're playing right now, you would on paper say no, but this is also the same franchise that in the past ended the Heat's 27-game winning streak. As we mentioned last year, we went into Golden State and won. So they're capable of greatness in spurts. I wouldn't be totally stunned if they won, but I also wouldn't be stunned if they lost by 27. This Golden State team right now is on a historic path to greatness, and we could just be right in the middle of that.
It is. It's kind of just showing, too, just how they have just changed and influenced the whole game as a whole, Charles Barkley was saying this is a team that cannot win a championship with all shooters, and they've proven the guy wrong. When you go 12-0 and you're averaging your point difference, the average of your margin of victory is by more than 15 points a game, that says something, because you're not just winning games, you're winning, you're blowing these teams out, and they've been playing some tough teams.
Yeah.
I'm looking, they beat the Raptors by 5 yesterday, granted. But if you beat the Grizzlies by 50 and then also 16, you beat the Pistons, who, look out for them this year. Pistons look very good. They handled the Pistons. They go ahead and handle the Nuggets. I'm just looking, there's not one game where I'm just looking at all the stat lines that Golden State doesn't look like they're the more deserving or best team in the NBA, for that matter.
And here's a stat for you, and I have to give credit to the Zach Lowe podcast for sending this one out there today. But when Steph Curry is on the floor, the Warriors teammates are getting uncontested shots 40% of the time. When he's off the floor, they're only getting it 21% of the time.
It's cut in half.
He is opening things up so much for them, to the point where almost half the time his teammates are shooting wide open looks. And, when they're already that talented and you give them such an advantage like that, they're going to be really hard to stop.
It's a revolution of what he's doing, especially... we're saying that he's giving these guys wide open shots, but honestly, he's not just giving anybody open shots. When you look at his surrounding cast, the supporting cast that's with him, go ahead and give Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala, Sean Livingston, Klay Thompson. Give any of these guys or whoever you want to give. You want to give what's his name? Ezeli,
Harrison Barnes, Festus Ezeli. Yeah.
All these guys. Give him an open dunk. See if he misses that. So that's a fact to me. That's incredible. How one guy can influence and have so much power on your defensive outtake.
Yeah. I say Bulls by 62 tomorrow. What do you think?
The over and under? By 62
the Bulls win by 62.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Overall, I like what I've seen so far. We didn't even mention Pau Gasol, who has been pretty good as well this year. Noah off the bench. So I think through 11 games, I'm feeling pretty good about them. Their next 3, they've got at Golden State, at Portland, at Indiana. This is one of their shorter road trips on the annual circus trip, which actually worked out in their favor. So I think they could end up winning 2 of these next 3, and at that point, you're 11-4. You're almost a quarter of the way through the season. I would feel pretty good about that, wouldn't you?
No, I would feel great about that too, especially like you said, getting this tough Western Conference, the annual circus trip out of the way and everything else. So, as a Chicago Bulls fan, you got to look at yourself and go, wow. And also too, we're talking about Jimmy Butler, how great. Just, people were questioning, all right, was that going to be just a 1-year stint of his play being an all-star caliber?
Yeah.
Holy, is he even better than last year?
He is better than last year. His player efficiency rating is at 20.8, which is really high. And really what it comes down to is there's only 3 or 4 players in the entire NBA that are as good as he is on both sides of the floor. And I can think of Kawhi Leonard. I can think of LeBron, obviously. I think of guys like, Anthony Davis.
Yep.
There's just not a lot of guys that are doing what he's doing right now. He's a top 15 player, and he is earning every penny that we've given him so
Thank God for that, too. So, yeah, I'm totally happy where we want to be as a Chicago Bulls fan. It'll be interesting to see how Rose's health maintains throughout the course of this season. Joakim Noah is finally looking healthier. What was wrong with his knee? Yeah, so, I'm content. I'm right where we want to be. The Bulls look very scary. Is this Jimmy Butler's team, by the way, now? Is this no longer Derrick Rose's team?
I think that narrative is kind of overblown, but he's our best player. There's no doubt about that.
Exactly.
It's everyone's team. It's technically Jerry Reinsdorf's team.
It's Jerry Reinhorst's team. Yeah. So, like you said, the Bulls will go ahead and play Golden State in their next upcoming game. Tommy, another episode in the books.
Oh, thanks for having me on as usual. And guys, enjoy your weekend and enjoy Thanksgiving.
Enjoy Thanksgiving. So, like I said, this is Mike Hansa, Tommy Doherty, Windy City Sports Podcast. Follow us on Twitter, everybody. Again, that is at WCS_sports. And look for us to be on SoundCloud in the near future, too. Again, Mike Hansa, Tommy Doherty, thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.